The message came from a stranger. She said she'd ordered earrings from Wren & Co. and wanted to know if I was the one who chose to leave. I didn't know what she meant. I was Wren & Company. I'd been Wren & Company for 6 years. I typed back, "I haven't gone anywhere." She sent a screenshot. The website had been redesigned. New logo, new photos, new About page. My name wasn't on it. Cassidy's was. And at the bottom, in the font we'd chosen together at 2 a.m. over bad wine and worse takeout, it said, "Previously a collaborative studio, now independently owned and operated." She'd been telling people I chose to leave. Cassidy and I met in a ceramics class 11 years ago. We were both terrible. My bowls looked like ashtrays, hers like deflated tires, and we laughed so hard during the critique that the instructor asked us to leave. We became the kind of friends who could read the other person from a single text, one word, and I always knew. I thought she was the same. She was at my mother's funeral. I was at her second wedding. We'd spent enough nights on each other's couches to have strong opinions about the other person's pillow preferences. She knew every hard thing that had ever happened to me. I thought I knew the same about her. The jewelry business started as a joke. I'd been making wire-wrapped pieces for years, mostly to stay calm after work, not to sell anything. But Cassidy had a background in e-commerce, and one night she looked at the pieces on my coffee table and said, "We could move these." 6 months later, we had an LLC, a shared account, and a name, Wren & Company. The Wren was mine, a tattoo on my wrist I'd gotten after a hard year, something about how wrens build their nests from whatever's around. Cassidy said it was perfect. I believed her. We split it cleanly. Design was mine, operations and marketing were hers, every dollar tracked. I still worked full-time at a dental office and made pieces on evenings and weekends. When Cassidy said she wanted to quit her job to focus on Wren & Co., I deferred my own salary, $1,200 a month, so she could draw a real one. I thought that's what partners did. By year 4, we had 14 wholesale accounts, an Instagram following just under 30,000, and a manufacturer in Rhode Island we'd found and vetted together. He gave us net 30 terms, said he liked how careful we were. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out for another 2 years, was that by then, Cassidy was already planning to make it only hers. The customer's screenshot was just the start. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I'd found the new LLC registration. Wren & Company, LLC, filed 8 months earlier. Sole member, Cassidy Rourke. 8 months, while we were still having our Tuesday check-in calls, while I was still designing the spring collection, while she was texting me about the linen colorway and telling me she was excited. She hadn't just re-registered the business, she'd filed a trademark on the Wren name, our name, the name I'd given it, the name on my wrist. She'd transferred the Rhode Island manufacturer contract to herself alone. She'd been pulling legal fees out of our joint account for 18 months. Every move had been deliberate. Every move had a timestamp. I went through the withdrawals. $4,200 over 18 months. Small amounts, spread thin. 140 here, 260 there. Legal fees. She'd been paying an attorney out of our shared account to help her dissolve me out of my own business. When I called her, she picked up on the second ring. She didn't sound nervous. She sounded like I was an interruption. She said the business had outgrown co-ownership, said she'd been carrying most of the operational weight for years. And then she said, "You were always more of a hobbyist anyway. I didn't think you'd mind." There it was. She had a studio by then, a renovated garage with pendant lighting, and a pegboard tool wall she'd been posting about on Instagram. Pieces laid out on a proper work table. Meanwhile, I was still at the folding table in my kitchen at 11 at night under a clip light, working a dental office schedule by day. She'd been drawing $1,200 a month from the business the whole time. I hadn't seen a cent in 8 months, because apparently I was already gone. But I hadn't looked at the wholesale correspondence yet. I still had access to the old shared email. Cassidy hadn't thought to remove me. I went through 2 years of outgoing messages. She'd contacted all 14 wholesale accounts since the re-registration. She'd sent each boutique a letter on new letterhead, signed only by herself, explaining that Wren & Company had undergone a structural transition and that going forward, all orders should go through her directly. 12 of the 14 had already made the switch. Quietly, without a word to me, because the letter had come from the business address, the business name, the account they'd always used. As far as they knew, there was nothing unusual. The stranger's DM made sense now. She hadn't been confused. She'd been told a story. And so had everyone else. She had her name on the business. She had the website, the account, the wholesale relationships. She had 30,000 people who associated her face with the brand. Every piece on that account, every piece in every boutique, was made by my hands. On that folding table, under that clip light, while she slept. But then I found the calendar invite. 14 months back, a call with a trademark attorney. I stared at the date for a long time, trying to figure out why it felt familiar. And then I remembered. 3 weeks before that call, I'd told Cassidy I was finally ready, that I was done splitting myself between the dental office and the kitchen table, that I wanted to go full-time, that I was ready to commit everything to what we'd built. She'd said, "That's huge. I'm so glad." She'd scheduled the attorney before I'd even processed the relief of finally saying it out loud. I sat with the emails open for a long time. I wasn't crying. I was reading. I was reading it the same way I used to read a contract, looking for what the words meant underneath what they said. I kept going back to the night we named the business. Late July, her back porch, the air heavy with the citronella candles she burned every summer. She'd pointed out my wrist tattoo and said, "Wrens are survivors. That's us." I'd believed her completely. I thought about the day we filed the LLC. She'd brought cheap champagne, and we drank it from mugs at my kitchen table. She said, "We're going to do something real." I'd saved the cork. It was still in a small dish on my windowsill. I thought about the Christmas she gave me a framed print of our first wholesale order confirmation, mounted and labeled The Beginning, still hanging in my kitchen, where I'd walked past it every morning for 3 years. And I thought about a Tuesday call 4 months ago, where she'd said, "I think we're really close to something big." She was right. She was already 8 months into building it without me. The citronella, the cork on the windowsill, the framed print, the Tuesday call, none of it meant what I thought. I hadn't been known. I'd been studied. I closed the laptop. Not because I was done, because I had what I needed. I'm not someone who acts in anger. It's a flaw sometimes. In this case, it saved me. Because anger would have meant calling her back and screaming wouldn't get the business back. I called a business attorney the next morning. Not to vent, not to process, to ask exactly one question. What's the claim worth? The answer was, more than Cassidy had planned for. The LLC dissolution had been improperly executed. She hadn't followed the buyout provisions in our original operating agreement, apparently assuming I'd never read them. The trademark filing was challengeable, given the documented origin of the name. 6 years of emails between us about the Wren tattoo, all time-stamped. The manufacturer contract transfer had a clause violation, and the $4,200 withdrawn from our joint account without my authorization? That was a clean, standalone theft claim. She'd done everything carefully. Every move had a timestamp, every transfer had a paper trail, every letter had a proper signature. Except one thing. She'd assumed I didn't keep records. I've always kept records. Every email, every contract, every version of every agreement, saved and dated. I stopped being the woman crying at her kitchen table. I started being the woman who organized the documents by date. What came next wasn't about hurting her. It was about making the math correct. My attorney sent the demand letter on a Thursday. 4 separate claims: improper LLC dissolution without following buyout provisions, unauthorized withdrawal of joint funds, trademark challenge based on documented origin, and breach of fiduciary duty. The number we put on it was $67,000, my share of the business valuation at the time of the improper dissolution, the $4,200 in misappropriated funds, attorney's fees. I read that number, $67,000, and I didn't feel relief. I felt math. 6 years of 11 o'clock nights at a folding table, 24 months of salary I'd deferred so she could quit her job and focus on something that was half mine. The name on my wrist she'd trademarked while texting me about the linen colorway. $67,000 was just the number we put on what I already knew. Cassidy's attorney responded within a week. They wanted to negotiate. We didn't negotiate much. 3 weeks later, she signed. $52,000. She surrendered the trademark. And she put in writing, her signature, her attorney's signature, that the Wren name was mine, in any business I chose to build. Forever. I re-registered Wren & Co. with myself as sole member on a Tuesday morning. I contacted the 2 wholesale boutiques that hadn't switched over and told them what had happened. Both of them came back the same week. Then I emailed the other 12. 5 returned within the month. The manufacturer in Rhode Island called me unprompted 2 weeks after the settlement. He'd heard through industry contacts. He said he'd always liked how careful we were, and he'd like to work together again if I was open to it. I told him I was. We signed a new contract the following week. The Instagram account, 30,000 followers, 6 years of content, wasn't covered in the settlement. Social media accounts are complicated, and technically it had always been in her name. But when I launched the new Wren & Co. page and posted a single, calm, factual account of what had happened, 11,000 people followed me in a week. Some of them had bought pieces from me for years. Some were strangers. All of them found their way here. I relaunched 8 months ago. The kitchen table is still where I work. I keep thinking about finding a studio, and I keep deciding against it. There's something about making things where you live, the way the work is just part of the room, part of the day, part of the ordinary light coming through the window, that I've never been able to explain to someone who doesn't do it. Last summer, I was on my own back porch, late July. Someone nearby had citronella candles going, and the smell drifted over. I used to feel that smell and think about the night she pointed at my wrist and said we were survivors. Now I feel it and think about what she got wrong. She remembered that wrens build their nests from whatever's around. She forgot. Wrens don't need what was taken. They build from whatever's left.